Last night, as promised, Elon Musk started releasing the documents that showed what Twitter was doing behind the scenes during the 2020 election. And this first iteration was all about Hunter Biden's laptop. And there was things that came out that really surprised me. I didn't really see it being that way, but there's also things that didn't surprise me. And even if you're not on Twitter or even care about Twitter, because Twitter definitely did work to affect the 2020 election. And they didn't work with maybe who you thought they did at first. So I'm going to show you all the relevant portions of that after you go ahead and like and subscribe. All right, we're going to start right here, and this is his 8th post, but it says, by 2020, requests from connected actors to delete tweets were routine. One executive would write to another, more to review from the Biden team. The reply would come back handled. So I want you to notice the date right here. This is October 24th, 2020. The election was November 6th, 2020. So this was before the 2020 election. And they're already talking about taking things down that the Biden team had requested. Biden was a candidate at this point. The celebrities and unknowns alike could be removed or reviewed at the behest of a political party, meaning the Democrats. And here's another example email. I grabbed the first one under SI, defer to safety on the high-profile second one. And we have Stephen Liuana and Real James Woods. And here are the contributions by party of Twitter employees. This system wasn't balanced. It was based on contacts. Because Twitter was and is overwhelmingly staffed by people of one political orientation, there were more channels, more ways to complain, open to the left, well, Democrats, than the right. And you can see their contributions to the specific political parties. It says here, White House spokeswoman Kayleigh McEnany was locked out of her account for tweeting about the story, prompting a furious letter from Trump campaign staffer Mike Hahn, who seethed, quote, at least pretend to care for the next 20 days. And here's the email from Kayleigh McEnany has been locked out from her account for simply talking about the New York Post story. All she did was cite the story and firsthand reporting that has been reported by other outlets and not disputed by the Biden campaign. I need an answer immediately on when and how she will be unlocked. I also don't appreciate how nobody on this team called me regarding the news that you'll be censoring news articles. Like I said, at least pretend to care for the next 20 days. This led public policy executive Carolyn Strom to send out a polite WTF query. Several employees noted that there was tension between the comms policy teams, who had little less control over moderation, and the safety and trust teams. Strom's note returned the answer that the laptop story had been removed for violation of the company's hacked materials policy. You can see the confusion in the following lengthy exchange, which ends up including Gotti and former Trust and Safety Chief Yoel Roth. Comms official Trenton Kennedy writes, quote, I'm struggling to understand the policy basis for making this unsafe. And it turns out that I'd mentioned in an earlier video that I believe that Jack Dorsey was a useful idiot. And it turns out I was right. Vijaya Gotti, who was, I believe, general counsel for Twitter, was the one calling all these shots. And Jack Dorsey had no idea what was going on the whole time. By this point, everyone knew this was effed, said one former employee, but the response was essentially to err on the side of continuing to err. They didn't want to give this up. It was too late at this point. Yoel Roth, the policy basis is hacked materials. Though, as discussed, this is an emerging situation where the facts remain unclear. Given the severe risks here and lessons of 2016, we're erring on the side of including a warning and preventing this content from being amplified. What lessons from 2016? Former VP of Global Comms Brandon Borman asks, quote, "Can we truthfully claim that this is part of a policy?" New. To Ian's point, can we truthfully claim that this is part of the policy, i.e., as part of our approach to addressing potentially hacked materials, we are limiting visibility of related stories on Twitter while our investigation is ongoing? To which former Deputy General Counsel Jim Baker again seems to advise staying the non-course because, quote, "caution is warranted." Here's Jim Baker's. "I support the conclusion that we need more facts to assess whether the materials were hacked. At this stage, however, it is reasonable for us to assume that they may have been, and that caution is warranted. There are some facts that indicate that the materials may have been hacked, while there are others indicating that the computer was either abandoned and or the owner consented to allow the repair shop to access it for at least some purposes. We simply need more information." One humorous exchange on day one, Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna reaches out to Gotti to gently suggest she hop on the phone to talk about the, quote, backlash regarding speech. Khanna was the only Democratic official I could find in the files who expressed concern. And good on him, Ro Khanna. Gotti replies quickly, immediately diving into the weeds of Twitter policy, unaware Khanna is more worried about the Bill of Rights. And this is his reply. It's a pretty long one. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Khanna tries to reroute the conversation to the First Amendment, mention of which is generally hard to find in the files. Interesting. Within a day, head of public policy Lauren Culbertson received a ghastly letter slash report from Carl Sabo of the research firm NetChoice, which had already polled 12 members of Congress, 9 Republicans and 3 Democrats, from the House Judiciary Committee to Judy Chu's office. Lauren, yesterday NetChoice's Chris Marchese met informally with 9 Republican and 3 Democratic House staffers to gather intel about Facebook and Twitter in the New York Post story. The staffers hail from the House Judiciary Committee to Rep. Judy Chu's office. NetChoice lets Twitter know a, quote, bloodbath awaits in upcoming Hill hearings, with members saying it's a, quote, tipping point, complaining tech has, quote, grown so big that they can't even regulate themselves, so government may need to intervene. Which is bad. This isn't what we want either. We don't want the government to start controlling this, which is what they were trying to do behind the scenes in the first place. Sabo reports to Twitter that some Hill figures are characterizing the laptop story as tech's Access Hollywood moment. Twitter files continue. The First Amendment isn't absolute. Sabo's letter contains chilling passages relaying Democratic lawmakers' attitudes. They want, quote, more moderation, and as for the Bill of Rights, it's, quote, not absolute. Really. Let's read this. The Democrats, meanwhile, complain that the companies are inept. They let conservatives muddy the water and make the Biden campaign look corrupt, even though Biden is innocent. They linked this to Hillary Clinton's email scandal. She did nothing wrong, but because the press wouldn't let the story go, it became a scandal far out of proportion. In their mind, social media is doing the same thing. It doesn't moderate enough harmful content, so when it does, like it did yesterday, it becomes a story. If the companies moderated more, conservatives wouldn't even think to use social media for disinformation, misinformation, or otherwise. The Democrats were in agreement. Social media needs to moderate more because they're corrupting democracy and making all truth relative. When pushed on how the government might insist on that, consistent with the First Amendment, they demurred, the First Amendment isn't absolute. The problem with the hacked materials ruling, several sources said, was that this normally required an official law enforcement finding of a hack, but such a finding never appears throughout what one executive describes as a whirlwind 24-hour company-wide mess. Now, I want to read a couple of other specific tweets before we go here, and This is what I was talking about with Jack Dorsey being a useful idiot. Number 23 here. The decision was made at the highest levels of the company about censoring the laptop, but without the knowledge of CEO Jack Dorsey, with former head of legal, policy, and trust Vijaya Gotti playing a key role. And this is another really interesting one because this kind of changes some views that I had of this originally. It says, although several sources recalled hearing about a general warning from federal law enforcement that summer about possible foreign hacks. I just want to read this one here before we go because I think it's interesting and it kind of is different than what my view of things were. Although several sources recalled hearing about a general warning from federal law enforcement that summer about possible foreign hacks, there's no evidence that I've seen of any government involvement in the laptop story. In fact, that might have been the problem. So I don't know about Facebook and how Facebook went about getting it censored and what their whole process was, but it seems like for Twitter, it was just Twitter employees working with the Biden campaign to cover up for Biden and help him get elected into office. Now, if this isn't election interference, what is? And like I said, if you're not on Twitter, that's not relevant to whether or not this is important to you because Twitter is a huge public square, and that's where a lot of the political discussion and debate was going on at that time. And to censor one side, you are essentially changing the election in a very major way. Well, thank you for watching this. Let me know what you think about this down below in the comments. And I appreciate you sticking by me. Go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. And until next time, peace be with you.